Welcome back to Conservative Conversations. I am your host, Reid.
And I'm Frank.
Today we're going to be talking about the wildfires in California, a follow-up on the Greenland story, and more. But before we get started, I'd like to remind you to follow us on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you'd like to hear extra bonus content, you can become a paid subscriber through our podcast host, Red Circle. So to get started, we're going to begin with the tragic news that's been going on in California, in Southern California with the wildfires. We did not get the chance to talk about it last week because it was still kind of developing news. So we figured we'd touch on it just briefly this week. And, of course, if you haven't had any recent updates, we got a few statistics for you. I believe according to CAL FIRE's own website. Is that right, Frank?
It's fire.california.gov, yeah.
Okay. It's so far 19 reported deaths, a little over 12,000 structures destroyed, and how many acres?
40,588.
Yeah, that's a lot of land.
Yes, it is. It's a lot.
And, of course, we wish everybody that has been impacted safety and well-being, and that you're able to find some kind of home and shelter until you can start rebuilding, which everybody's talking about. It's going to be a long process, costly one, too. I've heard people say some of the estimated damages is like in the hundreds of billions of dollars, because a lot of these homes are like $10 million homes.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
I really have no doubt. Especially the way, the costs of everything have just gone up. I mean, we've covered this. The cost of lumber, the cost of labor, the cost of everything. You name it.
Yeah. Yeah, the insurance, we've talked about that before, like at least a year or so ago.
Well, there's quite a bit on the insurance, and
Yeah.
maybe we'll save that for another segment or something, because, I don't want to end up opining too much about the insurance situation.
Right,
But
yeah.
that is on a lot of people's minds right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really feel like I have too much to say about it, other than, there's a lot of finger pointing going on, and some of it makes sense because, particularly with Trump, and even not just Trump, even people on the liberal side have been pointing out how mismanaged things are in California, and that they don't take care of things properly, and it's almost a no wonder of how this has happened.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been a long time coming.
Right.
And, this has happened before. I'll just say that. Remember, I mean, when was the last time? 2016 or something like that? Maybe closer
as far
to
as like a
2020.
major one, I think you might be right, but they were, I think I heard somebody, at least more than one person, talk about how there were fires like 4 weeks ago, something like that. Not as big.
I certainly remember. There's a distinct one that I'm talking about.
Right, I know which.
Because I worked in the wine business at the time, and I remember the grapes were affected, and the output, and how many bottles of wine were coming out of Napa, and there were other things that they had to adjust for. There was a sort of smoke problem, and there was other issues. I'll just put it that way. I won't get too technical or anything, but so I mean, they always have a chance to prepare for the next one, but they always seem to miss that chance.
Yeah, in one way or in the other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely a sad situation for a lot of people out there.
Well, and I'll tell you something really sad that I've seen off of this is there's a headline out, it'll be in the show notes, about how one Elizabeth Warren has been called out for using Act Blue, which is part of the fundraising wing of the Democratic Party, Act Blue, to fundraise on with these California wildfires.
Interesting.
Yeah, being called out for sort of mixing of funds, of political, party funds with aid funds for these
like relief
victims. Yeah, really, exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting. As somebody who sees herself as a watchdog for the consumer, the taxpayer, or whatever, surely she wouldn't be using such a thing as a fundraising campaign.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of that old phrase we got from, I forget his name. He used to be the mayor of Chicago. Never let a crisis go to waste, or whatever it was, something like that. It kind of seems like what old Elizabeth Warren's doing, playing.
I mean, it's just shameful, though.
It is,
and I don't know why it's always these like supposed angelic do-gooder type people like Liz Warren, and another one that comes straight to mind. You remember a little issue in a little island country called Haiti?
Yeah.
And what did the Clintons do? They went down there under the guise of help and aid and wrecked Haiti's economy, wrecked their recovery, wrecked them.
Yeah. Yeah, it is shameful to see, people take advantage of things like that for what appear to be purely political reasons. Like, I don't get the sense that Act Blue is going to go start handing this money out to the people who've just lost their houses.
Oh, maybe after they pay back the $20 million still owed by Kamala or whatever. I've heard no headline that's been settled.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so what if this is just, they're still trying to fill those coffers up because they have a deficit.
Right. Good point. I didn't think about that.
Either way, I mean, I'm not saying that that's what she's doing.
Sure, right,
but that's why you don't even let the implication of impropriety creep in, because then it's like, what, why would I trust you?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, she'll get what she deserves. I mean, from what it sounds like, people are kind of raking her over the coals for it, and rightly so.
But anyway, I just find that sad because not only are people suffering, but then you have people trying to get one over on you or use you as a publicity stunt, to boot. So
yeah, exactly.
Yes, we're praying for the people of California, the people who have been affected, and you'd have to forgive us for not following this more closely or having better coverage or details of it, but we live a long way from California.
Right.
And I'm sure, if you know somebody who's affected by this, I'm sure you're very concerned and up to date, and, you probably have a lot more working knowledge of, the facts on the ground than we do here, but we're certainly praying for those people. And I just would certainly hate, it's sort of the idea of falling out of the water and winding up in the belly of a shark. I wouldn't want to see that happen either. Somebody like Liz Warren come along, scoop you up, and next thing you know, you're, a show pony.
Right. Yeah. I will say, certainly out of all the tragedy has come some small miracles that I've seen. Just shortly before we started recording, Fox has a video up of this couple who come back to their home and found a statue of the Virgin Mary and St. Joseph still there.
Untouched, huh?
They said it was a little charred, but otherwise it was still intact. I mean, everything else was gone except those two statues, so it's quite a miracle. And the viral clip of them is them singing, I don't know what the proper term is, a hymn or a gospel or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are those small little miracles and little rays of hope out there.
Well, and I'll tell you, I mentioned on our last segment, we usually do New Year's predictions, and we didn't really this time. I didn't really have any, but one of the subjects we covered last time of Justin Trudeau stepping down in Canada and the way people are turning, and I've seen there's viral footage of the people running up to Gavin Newsom and pestering him on the street to his face and stuff like that. And I think it's been a long time coming. We've talked about it. You know, they had the recall effort. They had he ran against that Prop 36 or whatever it was, and it passed almost 70% in California. 70%'s a big number in California.
Yeah.
So I think the tide's really turning, and I predict that he'll probably be out over this. Like, he'll probably step down or have a vote of no confidence or something of the sort that Justin Trudeau's going through right now.
Yeah, a lot of people are upset out there.
Yep, and I wouldn't be surprised. Now, same for Karen Bass, but I don't know her situation that well. But I know she was a lousy congressperson. I don't know how she became mayor of that great city. And she's not doing it well. That's being called out, too. So I don't know her situation as well, like I just said, but I'd hope to see them both out.
Yeah.
And I would even go so far as to predict it. Now, I feel more confident with Newsom, but...
Right. Yeah, time will tell. I wouldn't be surprised at all either if it happens.
I think it's about time.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll go ahead and move on to our next topic. And I believe, Frank, you got a little follow-up on something we talked about last week.
We had been talking about this idea that Trump keeps espousing of us acquiring Greenland somehow.
Right.
And I had talked about how I don't really get it. I don't really know where he's coming from. I knew he talked about some type of, like, it was strategic defense, that kind of thing, but I didn't know too much about it. So I happened to see something, and I don't know the link. I couldn't remember. But I happened to see something the other night, as I was just casually watching stuff, and somebody talked about the history of us with Greenland. And it stood out to me, even though I don't remember it very well. But I wanted to look into it again and get some of the facts of it. But it goes back quite a ways. The idea that the United States would acquire Greenland somehow, or that territory. And it goes back as far as 1867. A man you guys may recognize, his name was William H. Seward. And you recognized him earlier.
Seward's Folly. Which was the purchase of Alaska.
Yeah, and they call it that because everybody thought it would be a mistake. It was just a lot of money for what? What's the point of it? What's the idea? I don't get the idea. Well, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because Alaska turned out to be quite resourceful.
Yep.
And, I've sort of changed on my thinking because of this process, which I'll talk a little more about. But so that was 1867, William Seward. Next guy is a guy named James F. Burns. I think that's how you would say it. Byrnes. And I'm not sure exactly what was going on in the world right there at 1910, but he and Seward were both secretaries of state and were interested in acquiring this land, which I find interesting. Next, we jump to 1946 when a vice president, Nelson Rockefeller, was interested in the idea. Then our next jump is to 2019 when a man named Donald John Trump started talking about it, which is amazing to me because, from 1867, from William Seward, who gave us Alaska, to now, to Trump, one of the greatest and most, breakthrough presidents of my life. I've never seen anything like this, you know. I just think it's interesting, and maybe I should come around, and why not Greenland?
Right.
Why not? And if I saw a poll, before we went to air, I don't know how accurate it is. You know how polls are.
Yeah.
But supposedly there's a poll out of these Greenlanders who say that they'd be over the moon to join the United States.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that too. I think it'd definitely be an interesting to go through with. Interesting thing to go through with. I think it's more reasonable than trying to, make Canada the 51st state or anything like that.
Yeah,
Because
I think so too.
from my understanding, it's like not very certain how much claim. Well, I think Denmark has over Greenland.
It's Denmark. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they also like belong to like something else, and it has to do with the history and culture. They have sort of a shared history and culture with maybe some of the other Icelandic countries like Finland and I can't remember right now, and I'm probably a little bit off, but you're right that there's a sort of quasi nature to Greenland's national identity.
Right.
And they are officially owned by Denmark, but they're also sort of like semi-autonomous.
Right.
And there's a lot of like native, we might say like Inuit type people.
Sure.
I don't know exactly who they are, but the interesting thing though too is there's an argument for the fact that we've had a presence there for a long time. And, well, we at least have one for sure. Right. I don't know about bases, but we've had a presence there for a long time. And apparently, like, way, way back, like, think William Seward type times, 1867-ish, they used to include Greenland in territorial maps of the United States just because they thought of it as a place they could use if they needed to.
Yeah.
Well, they never really had to use that, even though they thought of it, and it was just sort of a quasi, like, in the back of their mind, like, there's that territory sitting there we could use. They didn't have to use it till World War II. That's when we used the Monroe Doctrine and went in because we said we were going to defend Greenland against Germany, you know, like basically come hell or high water, whether they wanted us to or not.
Right.
We weren't going to let the Germans invade any further than whatever, basically. Yeah. So we set up shop there, even though they didn't necessarily like want us, or maybe we didn't necessarily have a right or a claim. We just sort of did it because we were at war with Germany. And we basically never left. But then Greenland and Denmark in 1949 joined NATO. So it just kind of became a non-issue because we sort of are NATO.
Yeah.
Right? So it all kind of became a moot point in a sense. And we've been there for a really long time.
Yeah.
And if the people want us, you know, if it's mutually beneficial to everybody, why not? Why the heck not?
Yeah. Right? I mean, if you know, whoever it is, the Netherlands or Denmark decides they're willing to make an agreement, I mean, so be it. They're the ones potentially willing to make that agreement or not.
Well, and if the Greenlanders are autonomous or semi-autonomous and Denmark's just their owner, like on paper, then what's it matter? If that's what the Greenlanders want, then what the heck does Denmark have to say about it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's like a terrible idea. I mean, there's definitely benefits to it, and as you know, some of the glaciers and ice starts to melt in the Arctic Circle, shipping lanes are going to open up more, and I'm sure we would rather be the ones patrolling them more heavily than, you know, Russia or China.
You bet your bippy.
So, yeah,
especially those guys at Quantico.
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty interesting idea, and could be quite good.
I think the most fascinating thing to me about it, and that's what's changed my mind. I'm now like pro Greenland. I told you, like, I want to make bumper stickers for the channel that say like Greenland is the last frontier or the next frontier or something like that. But I'm fascinated by the idea that it goes all the way back
Right. Yeah.
to 1867, which is, is only 4 years after West Virginia became a state.
Right.
I mean, that's a very interesting time in our history, 1863, 1867, the Reconstruction era.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it fascinating to play the what if game. Like, what if we had grown up in a world where Greenland always was ours?
Yeah.
And that's what's totally just made my head turn 180 degrees, is to think that it could have been ours this whole time.
Yeah.
That we've been sort of playing footsie with Greenland for a long time.
Right. Right. Will they, won't they?
Oh, yeah, so let's get it done. Tie the knot, I say, huh?
Yeah.
Welcome to the family. Mazel tov.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Definitely, something for the history books,
Oh, yeah.
along with
Well, and it's got this track record. It's not
Yeah.
something crazy Donald Trump did.
right.
It goes back to 1867, boy.
Yeah, he's just the guy that finally made it happen.
How about
Or
that?
could make it happen.
I just find the whole thing, I mean, it almost makes me happy to
Right.
think about the lost history, or our lost state
Right.
that could have been.
Yeah. Easy vacations to Greenland.
I would love to go. I'd be booking a flight over there tomorrow. I want to check it out. I want to stick a
Not
flag in
me.
the ground.
I'll wait until July.
I want to go pick my own spot.
when it's warmer.
It
it's
could be
cold there.
summer in Greenland right now. Who
It's-
knows?
It's freezing.
They're not even in the same hemisphere as us. How would you?
What are you talking about?
I'm pulling a Charlie, dude.
Oh goodness. Well, the next topic I was gonna bring up, it's just a real quick one that I saw earlier today. Full Measure, by Cheryl Atkinson. I've mentioned her and her show before. Great show if you haven't watched it. It's usually on like the Fox network, not Fox News, but like your local Fox broadcast network on Sundays, or you can watch it on Mondays on YouTube. But anyway, one of the stories for this week's episode was talking about how Microsoft has purchased the old nuclear plant in Pennsylvania that most people might know of as 3 Mile Island.
Where they had a disaster there.
Yeah, back in the 80s, right. And it was, I think, fully closed in 2019. But Microsoft is buying it to reopen it, to start it back up so they can use the energy that it'll create to run some of their like data centers and
It's kind of interesting.
things like that. Yeah.
It reminds me, I know you told me this in the warm-up segment, but I wasn't really thinking at that point. But I saw a documentary on 3 Mile Island recently, and it really wasn't that bad of a disaster.
Yeah,
actually.
I've heard that too. There's just a lot of like confusion and mismanagement as far
And it
as
just
the crisis
gets sort of
goes.
a bad rap. Yeah,
Right.
There was bad PR, you might say.
Right.
We might say.
Well, one of the things that is mentioned in the clip from the show, Full Measure, is that only like weeks or a month or so before, a movie had come out about a nuclear disaster. So that hyped people's hysteria.
Yeah, I think I remember that being part of the documentary too, that it was just like part of the zeitgeist at that time.
Right.
But there also was, there were mistakes made.
Sure.
And it wasn't what they call a disaster, but
Right.
it just wasn't like to the same level as like Chernobyl.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. But I think this is kind of a good idea and interesting to see like a specific companies, especially these technology companies that are going to be using this as data centers, because by 2030, they're projected to be using 9% of our electric grid or our energy usage just to run data centers with all these servers and stuff. So I think it's interesting to see like these technology companies like Microsoft buy the power plant themselves. And from my understanding, it's not like Microsoft's going to become a nuclear power generator, it's still an energy company that owns or operates it, and they're just buying all the energy
that's
from
usually how it works.
Right.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool, and we've mentioned here and there in the past about how, if we want to lessen our reliance on fossil fuels, nuclear is the next best option.
Yeah, I don't like it, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And I guess it's not that terribly scary. I mean, there's, a lot of science and a lot of precaution gets built in to the cake, but...
Right. Well, I mean, especially now, since technology is a lot better to control these things, I think there are some less concerns about, breakdowns and disasters.
I just would love to see a true revolution. And this is where, I'm no lefty, okay?
Sure.
But I'd love to see a true revolution in the form of like solar or something like that, where we could actually convert, like photon to watt, like on that level, 1-to-1, where these solar panels have perfect, output.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Not like, I've heard very low conversion rates, very low.
Right.
And it's like, why can't we kick that up? Like, how come? Who's going to have that breakthrough? Is it going to be Elon? You know what I'm saying? Who's going to be able to give us fully functional, 100%? You know what I'm saying? Because I think that would change everything about, and then we could stop relying so much on nuclear. Which, I'm not saying we should be afraid of it. There's something in me where it kind of churns my gut a little bit, but I just think there's something that I think is sadder about our culture, that there aren't more Elon Musks. You know what I mean? Getting us to where we need to be. Because people are begging for such a revolution. We have been for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'd be definitely worthwhile having all the options available, really. I mean, there's no need to put ourselves in a position to rely on even just two.
Right.
Because that's the term I've heard people talk about before, is the all the above strategy.
I just think it's scary. I mean, I don't want to go on a whole thing about what I think is scary about nuclear, but to just build more and 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 more, I mean, at some point, do I need to bring up Malcolm Gladwell? There'd be a tipping point. I mean, there'd be a nuclear power plant everywhere you step. We have to address, there's underlying issues at play,
Right. Yeah, I get that. I suppose with most things, there are pluses and the minuses.
Yeah.
I mean, because we've certainly seen horrific disasters just with oil. I mean, the Gulf that happened.
Yeah, but they won't compare to like a...
Well, sure, but I'm just saying there's plenty of disasters, and I don't know, I just feel like nuclear's been around long enough and plenty of other people use it that we haven't seen a dramatic number of them. But there's definitely always the concern, for sure.
Yeah.
But that's all I had on that. I just thought it was cool to see, some, I don't know if it's really a new idea, but something different happening, at least to my knowledge. I'm sure other situations have occurred before, like companies like Microsoft buying nuclear plants and stuff like that.
Well, I thought I heard a thing about Google doing it too, or is that...
I'm sure. I feel like that video mentioned that there are several companies trying to do this. I think that this particular story just happens to stand out because it's 3 Mile Island and that plant.
Oh, yeah,
historical.
Sure. I see that.
I was about to say historical significance, but...
Well, it sort of is.
Yeah. All right, well, that's all I had on that little topic about Microsoft buying that nuclear plant. And then with that, we'll do our exclusive segment real quick. And if you'd like to hear it, become a paid subscriber through our podcast host or Red Circle. You can find links in the description below. Well, is that all you got?
That's all I got.
All right. Well, listeners, we hope you have enjoyed this great conservative conversation. And if you do enjoy these shorter and more frequent episodes, please be sure to let us know. You can tell us in the comments on the YouTube channel. You can leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Just follow us at Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, and many more. And you can search for our YouTube channel just by searching at Conservative Conversations 92 on YouTube. And I believe you can even type in youtube.com/at Conservative Conversations 92.
That's right. We hope you might share us with a friend or two and encourage them to become paid subscribers so that they have access to the same bonus and exclusive content that you have access to. And as always, we thank you for listening.